Okay, so episode 2 of us two hacking on a CocoaPods readme changelog generator thing that still doesn't have a real name. At the end of our last thrilling episode, we discovered that we couldn't find a way to unit test the ability that we have registered a webhook. So I took a look around, and it looks like they're just no one's doing it in a special way. It's just you just use jest like normal. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna write a test where we take this express object and we're gonna make a fake version of that, and we're gonna validate that /post gets called on it. So we're gonna do a jest mock at the top. So it's jest.mock, and it's gonna be express outright. The value that it's gonna return is gonna be I'm pretty sure we need to include default here to make this work. The first thing it's going to return is a function. And that function is going to have to return something. I know, look at this. This is like, pretty. Right, it's going to need to return a mock, and that's going to return this express here. That's going to need to have a set function and a post function. So set would look jest.fn so that we could validate it, and post is going to have jest.fn so we can validate it. All right. I wish it was just a little bit longer so it triggered the 180 rule. Okay, so this is still complaining that express is not a function, so maybe we can try actually returning the function straight off. Where does that end? Like this? Maybe? Is it complaining about the syntax? Yes. So this is a function that returns a function that returns an object. There's the object. And where does this come from? Nowhere.
I think you just don't need either, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's have a look at what express is at this point, because should say this in line. Oh, we haven't imported it, so we'll need to import it also. Doesn't say it in line, so let's look at our tests. Can't read property post of undefined, which is right. This set function is meant to return the original, right? So this is express.set.post. Bit of a nightmare, so this is probably why I wrote it like this. Which is okay. So we can now do something like this. Expect.
And express is just theta?
Yeah, it just returns an object, or maybe even a function. I mean, according to that, it's a function.
Okay.
So it returns that, and then it configures it in this just a little bit afterwards. So we can say that we should expect express. Yeah, it's a little bit harder to actually get to it, so we're gonna have to do this. We have to pull this jest.function outside of this and move it to there. And now we expect that mock post to be called with, and I can just put this and hopefully expect.anything here. And that should, I mean, in an ideal world, that should actually be failing. Oh, it says skip. Test wasn't even running, everybody. Okay, so this is perfect, right? Like I did it wrong on purpose, and it's saying that /webhook was called, which is great because that validates the test. So now it's actually green because it's real. And I don't need that. I don't need that. Right, that validates the full that's my unit test.
Okay. So let me see if I understand. Can you scroll up to the very top? We're missing a line. So
sure.
So you're creating this let's see. Creating a mock test with which is a jest function.
Yeah, so I'm taking express, so when it's being imported there, and I'm saying you're going to return a function that returns an object. That's what this will do.
Yep.
And then inside that, the object that is inside it which will be app at this point, will need to have set, and it will need to have post because they're both being called.
Cool.
And mock post I took outside of here so that I could access it further down. So this test doesn't make me feel good. Because look, what's going on here? Literally nothing. I think I could actually delete that and the test would still pass. I can't. Why? I don't know why. So, but I don't like this. This isn't set up the way that a test should be set up. So this is now actually going to be called create app, and it's going to be a function that will return app. So that means that I can do this multiple times. What am I missing? Oh, I'm missing an equal sign. Okay, so now we have a function called create app that will return our app. So doing this will now actually say we're not working on side effects now.
Yeah.
I mean, we are working a little bit on side effects, but the side effects are being ran inside this test. So every time we run this, every test that we would write, it would be a unique environment each time.
Yeah.
And that's the ideal. This is the test that I wanted earlier.
Okay.
I mean, the super ideal would have been able to look inside the app and like pull it out.
Actually see what we're getting, but at least now we're checking that the app is being called as we expect it to be called.
And then later, if we add gets or whatever, we can add mock get, and then we can put that in here, and we can validate all that stuff too. In theory, we can also validate this, but I mean, there's levels of care that I have, and we're past it. So now we have a real test. I can delete this fake one. We have a server. The server's API has changed, so index will now be wrong. So we need to create an app. So right.
Yep.
Now the server will run again, and we're back. So this is good. Next step then is going to be to let's fake some data. So we're gonna make a test for the webhook. We already had an interface for what a test looks like in the webhook, which is this. So we're gonna make a fake one. I'm just going to copy it there for easiest. Oh, actually, we're going to make it exportable. Where's that webhook? And we'll move the test over there. Let me do that. This one? There we go. And that one. Cool. Test here. Thing here. We make this exportable so we can include it in here. What? Oh, there's two things. No. I guess interfaces don't show up in that list. Get really lazy when you just have autocomplete. Alright, there we go. So I need to create a thing that's one of those. So const dummy data. I'm gonna say it's a trunk webhook. And we're going to set it up. So it needs to have a type, which we'll call created. I'm pretty sure that's what it looks like. Maybe action is created. I'm not really sure. I'm just going to copy and paste all this because it's just strings all the way down.
Yeah.
And edit those. Make them say string. And needs comma. So let's see if we can get back into that. Get it there. Do this. Okay. Can't read property type of undefined. Know what that means. Right, because that's not setting it. Great, we're good. So type equals something. Let's take a quick look inside trunk. We may actually still have it around, right? Peril, no, okay. In here we had code, trunk. I mean, it's a pretty safe bet that there's a fixtured example somewhere in here. There we go. Post receive hook webhook maybe. But that's on the GitHub, so we don't have it. It's probably not what we want. That's probably not what we want either. Is there anything else that's useful in there? That's actually one. Yeah, that is one. So I've got no idea what the syntax is. Maybe it's a string that's been jammed together. Yeah, but whatever. It looks like an example one. So we have type as pod, action as create, a timestamper list. Pod is a name, version is a name, commit char, data URL. Okay, so like I think this is like I don't know, it's like maybe a serialized form. But we care about this JSON that we can more or less just rip out and move it into our project. So that's Peril, this is webhook, it's Peril, this one. So let's just cheat. We can rely a little bit on what's an easy way to do this? Kill that, kill that, kill this, kill that, kill those, kill this. Is that enough to make it compile? Is that plus there? Kill that, kill this. That UTC was on the end of that. Okay, this is starting to look a bit better. There's 2 commas. There we go. Bang.
Wow.
Prettier. So pod create is a real one. That's a real timestamp. There's a pod name. There's a version name. Shard. This is perfect. So this is what we will receive in that webhook. So we're not gonna do much with it right now, but we're gonna end up making a test. So you would find inside the request. So you'd be like request.body.something. So I'm pretty sure it's gonna look like this. So it's gonna be an object. It's gonna have JSON as a thing you can call. It's gonna return a function that returns a promise, and that promise is gonna resolve like. Why is it giving me jip about that? It's going to resolve with dummy data. What's this about? What? Can I not use promises anywhere? Okay, I know what this is. The TS config is not set up to include all the fancy stuff. We need probably this. Yep. So this just tells TypeScript that I want promise to exist. There we go. So do I get it now?
Still doesn't like it.
Says it exists at runtime, but it doesn't exist there. So we'll just keep moving on. We'll figure out that later. So I'm gonna call trunk webhook with our new request object. We don't have a response object yet, so we'll just make it empty. We can do something with that later. And next is also another next is a function, so let's just do jest.fn. I don't know much about this stuff, this next function. Kind of confuses me personally, so we're just going to ignore it like I do in Peril. It's going to say that request doesn't actually represent what it should be. Argument of type this doesn't directly transform to what an object.request is, because it's much more complicated, because it's actually a thing that does all this stuff. But we don't need that yet, so we're just going to we're going to tell TypeScript that it's fine. We're going to tell TypeScript that this is fine. And maybe we don't need to do it for next. Yep, that's great. Okay, we've actually set ourselves up for a test, but we actually don't have anything to test right now.
Yeah.
So that's totally fine. You can actually see that it's running in the test by it saying the word hi there. Yeah. So we're going to need to do some work. And I think the first bit of work that we'll need to do is probably take this data URL and pull down the real trunk, the real metadata.
Yeah.
So we're going to need a copy of fetch, and fetch is not included. Oop, nope, there we go. So we're going to have to add it. So yarn add node -fetch, and I'm pretty sure you have to add types independently. So at types /node -fetch.
Oh, you're missing a P in types.
Ah, so close. Okay. Great. So we can import that at the top. I bet it's a star as fetch from fetch. You can validate this by just writing fetch dot a fetch. Nope. It's like can't find mod. Oh, we probably need. Do we need to restart Wallaby to do that? Hey, cool. There's an update for it while we were working. Nice. Maybe fetch actually includes something. What's going on here? What's going on here? Definitely added it. Added types. Yeah. Let's just reload it. If not, we can just. Oh, it might be. It's called node fetch, not fetch. Okay, so does fetch exist? That does summon. Okay. Maybe we'll just see if this does it. Okay, that was how you do it. You just semantics, man. Okay, so we need to take the data out of this. So this is now. All right, let's give ourselves some space to work. So this is now going to be an asynchronous function because we're going to do some asynchronous work. So the first thing that we're going to do is pull out the trunk webhook. So const webhook JSON equals await const web so close request.body. Oh, I was thinking of something else, you know. So we don't need that await yet, but we will need it in a second. This webhook JSON is going to post some JSON. We do need to pass it. How do we do it in Peril? Peril? Is there a post use post webhook? The webhook. And we pull this out. We do GitHub routing. I think it handles everything for us here. I think I have some code that like turns it automatically into JSON rather than. It's like this event pulls that out of this and it passes the request in. So the request comes into this and it's called an xhub request for a bit. That just validates that it's like signed correctly. And then we look on the event. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, in that case, it's automatically turned to JSON. So why don't we do the same thing? It's very safe that we're gonna get JSON from everyone. So we need to just double check the package that includes it. I think it's like Express. It may even be included. Great. If we remember when we looked at the setup of Peril, there's this body parser.json, which will automatically pass the JSON. Looks like there is a separate module though called body parser, so we'll have to add it. So this is going to be in the setup of our app, which is in server, which will go here. That goes up to the top, and that goes in here. So let's put it before. We can actually verify that gets called if we care. I kind of don't care, so I'm kind of okay with that. I'm going to add it to the dependencies. How many dependencies do you reckon we're at now?
700?
700? Dang, man. That's unoptimistic. Like,
all right, 2 more.
2 more. I think a lot of the ones that we used were already in the tree. We just declared them as something that we want. So our test broke, which is what this is telling us, because we only did setup and we didn't do use, which is kind of cool. So we can actually validate this too. We can actually go all out and be like, close. We don't necessarily need to test that it uses the right bit of data. But we can validate that mock use was called. but I don't really care that it's been called with anything. So it's just to be called. Green. Great. So JSON comes through. This means that by the time we get here, the request.body is actually going to be JSON. So we can say now this is going to be the trunk webhook. So now we can look at the webhook JSON, and we can be like, those are the only things that it could be. So let's validate that it actually has the data URL before using it, because that's just good practice. And we are going to try and fetch it. So webhook JSON. We don't need any fancy options yet, but we definitely will in the future. And it's a promise, so we can use await. So this is going to give us the pod spec. Is that enough? No, that's passing the JSON, so that's the data. Right. There we go. Types. So this is actually not going to give us... What is this? This is annoying. It doesn't give you the exact object that you expect, because you have to pull it out a second time. So this is like pod spec request response, and the next one is actually the pod spec JSON. And that's going to be await, which is like... You ever heard of a promise?
Vaguely.
Imagine like it is the simple idea of a promise of a value eventually.
Yeah.
So like making a network call, you say, okay, you promise to return me whatever you do in the end. But you want to be writing code where you can describe it in a kind of in a logical fashion, like step. So what this await word does is it says, if the promise goes through perfectly, then just takes the value of that and put it into this const.
Right.
If it doesn't go perfectly, then it will raise a full error that will go through the entire system. So it's like, as long as things are on the happy path, this is fine. Majority of the time, things are nearly always on the happy path, and there's just ways of handling when it's not. So the podspec JSON is going to be the podspec response .json. Okay, cool. So let's take one of our pod specs. We had one here. I'm going to grab this. Gonna copy it. I'm going to do JSON to TS. It's just going to generate as our thing. It might need a 2. Oh, there we go. So I can just drop that in here, and this is what it looks like.
Nice.
So, pretty common tactic. All right. So one of the ones dependencies is just going to be a straight up any, because I know that doesn't really look like what it says there. And there should be so this doesn't contain all the metadata. There's obviously there's stuff that's not used in this pod that is used elsewhere. Okay, so this root object is now a pod spec JSON. So it's cool. Just lets you know what's really going on there. We probably will not need any of those, but we will need source, and license is ideal too. So we don't need this. We don't need this. We probably need the majority of those things though. Cool. So this podspec JSON is now going to be a podspec JSON. Damn it. This one's a lowercase p and this one's a capital case P, man. So what we've done so far, we get a webhook from trunk, it comes back, and then we say, okay, go grab the podspec JSON. We pull that in, and we've got it right here. One of the things that we should do straight away, actually, now that I think about it, is first of all we can delete this. And we send a response back because we don't actually need to wait until it's finished. We just should say, yeah, we got it.
We're doing it. Yeah,
thanks. Yeah. Which is what I do with Peril. So let's do a quick look at what we got in here. Right. So this is what the structure looks like. You can you say return. I don't know what it's returning, but you send a status and you do send. So we can do we can do this. We can do what? Oh, res status. Well, okay. Let's get ourselves on a happier path. What about this? Well, as we go through here, we're going to validate things that we definitely need.
Yeah.
Yeah, 404 seems reasonable. And then it's like send probably, and we'll just send. Can I send? If I send any, do you reckon it'll go as a JSON object? No. There we go. Cool. So we verified that's there. We'll also return it so that it finishes our execution model. As we get, okay, so this is a good spot for writing a test because we've got to validate this now.
Well, we can just get rid of this if statement, right? Because we're already checking that above.
Yeah, puts us on the golden path, which is the further to the left you have your code, the better. Perfect. So res now actually is going to do some work. It's going to need to respond to status, and it's going to need to respond to status to send. Which is a bit, which is why I hate this model. So we need to. It needs to have a function on it called status, and that's also got to return, maybe even itself. So that status is going to do. It's going to be a jest.fin. And the inside of that, maybe we could skip the jest up function. Okay, we'll see where we go with this. It's got to return. Allowed? It is allowed. Okay, so this is a little bit easier then. And then this is going to do send. That's also going to return. It's also going to return itself. So if I pass in bad data, the bad data that we send in is going to actually be body, and it's going to be an empty thing. This trunk webhook has no tests. Expect that res.send to be called with, and it's like put some text. Perfect. So it actually got called with JSON. Perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. Right, but it's not that. It's a real object because that's what we're sending. Perfect. And then we can validate that status is also called with 404. Perfect. Bang. Validate tests. So next we don't need. So let's see if we can just tighten this up a little bit. No. Let's do this. We'll take next out and put it up at the top. So it's not actually part of this test, it's just unused. Cool. Setup, execution, validation. Perfect. The right type of test for me. Alright, so we've got a test now that this fails. The next thing is that it goes on. We pull out the podspec JSON and we're gonna end up I think that's actually maybe enough code for just this function. So we're going to start making work that happens based off the podspec JSON. So I think the first one is let's just do something that takes the podspec and returns GitHub metadata for it.
Sure.
That's a folder. We need a file. So what this should do is it should take. Okay, so this is now. It's now time to take this out of this file. It's not the greatest of names, but I'm not complaining. I'm gonna export all of these things. Okay. Now this can get used in the webhook. You can port it automatically. Okay, that's good. So now I'm gonna need this function here that's we're gonna create. So that's export. Do I have the name still? Yep. Inside it's gonna be a pod spec. Yeah, that's fine. Pod spec JSON. There we go. And we're actually gonna return GitHub metadata. So. I'd rather like in parallel I'm fighting with this problem of like I make all these things that are like called GitHub runner, GitHub installation settings for thingy things. It is like impossible. GitHub run settings, which sounds a lot like GitHub run configs, and I just struggle with having terse names. So I think
specific names are rarely a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm giving up on that. So this is gonna need to have name, which is a string, org, which is a string, and like the return value of this is actually going to be an optional GitHub details, because it could not return it, right? If you don't have a or undefined. Oh, maybe there's a better way of doing this. You right? That's do this. No. Okay. Yeah. Undefined. Is that how you say undefined?
Even before the last D.
No, oh yeah, undefined.
Still doesn't. Yeah, no, it doesn't like it though.
It must return a value.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so we're good. So I mean, this is a very small function, so we can write it pretty quick. So we need to validate that a pod spec actually includes GitHub. So if we take a quick look at 102, this one has a reference here and a reference here, and that's a pretty good thing to go with. This is a pretty serious library though, so let's try and find something that's
a serious library.
Oh, I get it. Let's try and find something that someone's put a little bit less effort into. I mean, it's got screenshots, so better. So what's that? You can get it in homepage. You can get it on Git. Like, I think this is probably going to be our key thing here.
Yeah.
This is a small library, so it's got 90 downloads. So they may also, but it's got a good README. Yep, there and yep, there. Okay, so I mean, I'm feeling like those two alone are enough to probably work with. Down under all the screenshots, pod spec. It's got it in source. It's got it in homepage. And it seems those two enough should be like. Those should be fine. So if the pod spec homepage, first it has to exist, so let's validate that first. So wait, if there's no pod spec, what's the right pattern to handle this? I don't know if to fail early. I think maybe failing early is probably better. So.
And is homepage just we know it's always going to be Git, or is it possible for it to be something else?
Could be Bitbucket. We support you could be.
Okay.
So this is to try and find anything that's not on GitHub, basically.
Right. Okay.
the one thing we can pretty much guarantee that if it's on GitHub, its source is going to be on GitHub. So maybe that's the thing that we look for. So it's like, if the podspec.source. We can't be guaranteed that it is Git. So if it was like HTTP, it would actually say HTTP. So that's our first call. If the podspec source if this does not exist, then we return undefined, definitely. Step one. From there, we then do a check to see if this includes, because it's a string, right, then we return undefined. So it's like, the first one is you're using something other than Git, which is totally reasonable. I can give you an example, like maybe Fabric. There he is. Source HTTP, so there's no Git there at all. In fact, there's no reference to GitHub on this entire one, so we can't do anything with that. So that at that point, that one would return undefined, and there must be some that use Bitbucket. And
is it always GitHub, or is it sometimes just Git for the source?
No, you will definitely have to include the word GitHub in there somewhere.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm gonna be lazy because I know that in peril, in danger actually. So let's open that up. Oh, it's not even in there. No, let's not do it on that one. There is a package specifically for getting metadata about GitHub directly from a URL like that.
Nice.
Yeah, I used it so that people could just paste in whatever they want anywhere. Pass GitHub URL.
Sounds about right.
I know, right? Oh, it's got Z in there too. Hey. What was that about? Jan, add. Thanks. Okay. How's that used? Right. So this doesn't have types, so we're gonna have to declare that it doesn't have types, and we know what we're doing. So the way that works is you create a file that is a .dts. And you just paste this in, and it says whenever you see pass GitHub URL, just assume I know what I'm doing. Which is basically what we're gonna do. So let's take this. My keyboard acting up. Okay, it now exists, so we can do this. Right? Yeah, it's just ordering. Bang. What does this return? Great question. We can. It might return like some pretty big object. Nope. So it returns repo, owner, name. Like, it's almost the exact same thing that we just did. So it's owner, name, repo. So this will be a string. This will be a string. So there we go. This is maybe not in there. Wait, this is probably always in there, but this is probably not always in there. Cool. So that's what this is going to return. And we'll just tell TypeScript that we know what we're doing. Okay, so this is good. We've added some new code. So we add some new tests. We're gonna get this. .test.ts. And the suite must contain at least one test, so we add one. So that's going to be get GitHub metadata, and we're passing in a full pod spec, so we're just going to actually cheat a bit. We're going to call it any, which tells TypeScript we know what we're doing, even if we're actually not doing it correctly. So the only things that we care about in these tests are that the source is there and that Git is there. And I'll just copy and paste one from our existing pod specs. Do we have one around? Nope. Yeah, Apollo. So this is an exact use case. It looks like this. Perfect. And we can... what is this? This is the details. And it's going to be pod spec. And we can just validate exactly what it is. So we can do this. Well, that's the full Monty. So we can just copy and paste this in and Prettier will handle it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, no one really wants, like, we don't need that. Yeah. This is kind of nice though, href. I'm gonna keep that. I'm gonna keep that in here. It's also optional. So, is it optional? Probably not optional. I'm putting it in. We're gonna take this and we're gonna do a better version. I'm pretty sure contain. No. Match. Object. Subset. Perfect. Oh, jest. What you like. So like this still passes because it's only caring about a subset of it.
Yeah.
So the things that we care about are repo, owner,
name, href, and branch.
href, and yep. Branch.
We don't have a branch, which is fine because we said it's optional.
Exactly. There we go. So we validate the data that's comes back like this. This is one of the cool things about TypeScript. We only like say the parts that we care about. Everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah. Now, what about so repository and repo are the same thing, but we don't actually mention repository in the interface. Do we need to?
Nope. Let's just kill that.
Yeah.
It's not relevant to this. Let's get my. I have a GitLab for danger. So if we passed in danger as a CocoaPod somehow, we're expecting it to be undefined. The defined is, there we go. Hey, like a jest. Isn't that great?
Nice. Cool.
We'll also do one more. So this is checks. Returns undefined for GitLab, sure. And then the other one's going to be HTTP, because that's the other thing that we cared about. And we could grab that from Fabric. So I think, like, personally, you should always try and use real data as closely as possible in your tests. So, I mean, I could just put anything in there, but, like, I think it's much better to be like showing the exact examples, so that then when you come along later and you look at the test to see what's going on, you're like, oh, I get it. All right, so that should be undefined, which is great. So that's undefined for HTTP roles. Cool. Okay. So we have this, and now we can go back to our webhook. And we can decide whether we actually even have GitHub metadata. Mm-hmm. So this is work, but maybe not. I think it's fine at this point to return a status saying that we're okay. It's possible that things are going to be broken, yes, but we want to tell the server that it's fine. Pretty much as soon as possible.
So is there just basically such a low chance of anything going wrong when we're actually fetching the data URL or the JSON that we're okay to send that status before we do that step?
I think the way that I think about it is data validation has passed, and there is a separate server that let's not let his good old Felix's what we do not disturb. So validation has passed, so we can tell the other server, because it's a webhook. It's not like a request from a human.
Right.
As quickly as possible that like the thing you sent is fine. Okay, I'm gonna do my work.
Right. Okay.
So like realistically, if we wanted to do error reporting in this, we either do it for console.error or we send a Slack message.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is basically the summary of every artsy project I end up working on. So we need to get the GitHub data out of it. And that can be done by doing get GitHub metadata, pod spec, JSON. Something's wrong. Yep, there we go. We're just gonna be like, this is an error. I can live with that for a second. So pod spec. Wait, the name of it. So let's do it in one of these. Name is gonna be pod webhook JSON dot pod. And then we'll give the version 2, just so we got some good version logging. Is not a GitHub project. Skipping. Cool. Return. So at this point on, we can make the assumption that GitHub details is fine. So like at this point, it's both undefined and that. I'm pretty sure at this point now, GitHub details will only act like See, it's got rid of the undefined because we returned here, which is lovely.
Yeah.
That's what's like.
That was one of those new features that they just rolled out like last release, right?
Not strictly last release, but in the last like 2 or 3.
Okay.
So it's super cool, yeah. So okay, we now are guaranteed we've got GitHub details. So let's. How long have we been recording? Another 47 minutes. Okay, you're gonna have to leave soon. So I think this is a good enough time to call a good point. We've wrote a few more tests. We've like put a few more interfaces in, and we've started to connect things together.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. It's like at the end of every single one of these things, we make a commit.
Always and forever.
So prettier, we'll run across this and clean it up. We added node fetch and body parser. We never tested the fetching, but that's fine. We can do that later. We took away a dummy test and we started filling out the app. So the app actually has some work in it now. So that was that initial. This is that initial test that we spent some time trying to figure out, and it also validates that the JSON body parser is at least passed in.
Right.
We moved from create app being like a default thing, so when you evaluate the JavaScript, to it being a function inside the JavaScript.
Yep.
We added body parser so that JSON will be passed through. This is that function instead of the direct export. And then we started like wrapping out the pod spec metadata and getting GitHub metadata out of an existing pod spec. So we ended up replacing our dummy webhook with some real code. So we validated that we can actually get the data. We send a request to get the data, bring it back, and then we get the GitHub metadata out of that pod spec in case it's not a real thing. In case it's not a GitHub project, which is what we check next. Right. And we give a console error, but like we don't actually return a status because at this point we've already told the server that it's fine.
Yep.
And then I'm a little bit suspicious about that about that promise. Is it still there? Where was the promise? We used it in. Was it in the test that we actually saw it?
I think you might have gotten rid of it.
Oh. we go. That problem doesn't exist anymore because we've hidden it. So I'm going to assume that everything is totally fine. And then you can see it adding the new things that we worked on, we added in the dependencies into the lock file so that we have the same version next time. So that's good. We are going to say that this adds it grabs the pod spec. Yeah. The webhook from trunk will grab a pod spec is, I think, a reasonable thing. Okay. That was episode 2.
Nice.
Cool.
Good luck. Yeah.
Right. Ciao, everyone.
Later on.